Welcome to the Everyday PM podcast, the podcast where we discuss project management principles for your everyday life. My name is Campea, and I'm a certified project/program manager with over a decade of experience working for various industries: healthcare, retail, consumer goods, tech, marketing, you name it. I feel like I've been through the gambit of all of them. I'm so excited to welcome Laura Chattington, who is the founder of Talking Shop Co. She carries such an impressive resume, which we'll go into when we talk about her background. But she is on the podcast today to talk to us about 5 secrets for connecting and influencing others. I can't stress how important this topic is, especially for our project management community, as a big part of what we do as project managers is not just to motivate teams, but also to influence and connect them as well. So Laura, you're coming with the secrets. Welcome to the podcast. For those who have not met you yet, please take a brief moment to introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, I'm Laura, and I help professionals communicate and present with confidence. I help them influence upwards, and I really help them accelerate their career. And thank you very much for having me on your podcast today.
Absolutely. And Laura, you bring such great big accolades, but I think some of the things I want to call out for our audience are your over 20 years of experience of directing multi-million-dollar projects, global communications, right? Communicating up to your executive C-level suite executives is a particular focus area for you, and helping coach others on how to do so. So you bring forth your expertise, and you're going to teach all of us on how to connect and influence others today. But before we get started, why don't we go through just kind of a brief introduction of your professional background?
Sure. I actually started out my career, believe it or not, as a computer programmer, which was many, many, many years ago. And actually, it wasn't very cool to be a techie at the time, but that was my chosen profession. And back then, the programmers were sort of kept in a different room, and no one really understood what we did, and we sort of sat there with, you know, on our computers with our hoods up. It was sort of like that profession. And there were really 2 things that made me different. One of them was I was female, and there were hardly any females in the tech industry back then. Yeah. And the second thing was that I could actually communicate with humans, which was also quite a novelty back then. And actually it meant that very early on in my career, in my early 20s, I was sort of put into positions of project management and managing clients and directing projects, because I could communicate between both the technical world and I understood the business world, and I sort of had that human interaction. And actually,
it's a superpower.
It's a superpower, and funnily enough, it still is actually.
Yeah.
It's really have that connection between those worlds is hugely valuable. The way I actually got into communication and influence was really because I did a presentation once after I'd worked on a project. It was an information hub for a merger of law firms, and we had worked, you know, sweat and blood and tears for 14 months, delivered this project. I worked alongside the client, and the project was delivered successfully, so successfully that the 3 senior partners came and said they wanted to have a meeting with me and my project team. And actually that was awesome, which was great because they wanted to talk about what the next steps were. But I remember sort of putting down the phone and thinking, you know, the idea of presenting to anyone filled me with horror. And I sort of spent the next week sort of fretting and not sleeping and not eating. And I remember going into that presentation, and the 3 senior partners were in front of me, and my team and the client's team. It was kind of this horseshoe shape. And I walked up to that front of that meeting room, and for the next 15 minutes, I sort of bumbled and mumbled, and I sort of stared at the floor, and I stared at the presentation, and I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. And instead of sort of talking after that presentation, the senior partners asked a couple of polite questions and sort of left, right? Because they're like, you know, and it was really at that point where I realized that, you know, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much effort and sweat you put into a project, if you cannot communicate and present effectively to all the stakeholders in your project, you know, your clients, your bosses, your team, whoever it is, if you cannot communicate and influence effectively, you're just not going to get as much success. And I sort of spent, since that awful presentation, I decided I was never going to go in and have that same experience. And I've sort of spent my career working in industry and directing projects, but also mastering the art of communication and influence. So the tools that I'm going to talk about today, or the strategies I'm going to talk about today, are really applied in industry. It's not theory. It's just stuff that has been really effective for me during my career.
Okay, well, why don't we dive right into it? I imagine communication has some sort of influence in the secrets you're going to actually be able to disclose with us today. But why don't we run through, at least starting with the 5 secrets? What are they for connecting and influencing others?
For sure. And I think, you know, you said it at the start, being able to communicate and build rapport with the people that you're speaking to is critical, no matter what job you are. If you're interacting with other human beings, you need to be able to do that. And I think with project managers, you know, you need to be able to influence others and connect with others and get rapport with others, so that you can, you know, persuade people to take action, to get responsibility, to, you know, manage your team, to sell into solutions into clients. So it's really critical in a project management role to be able to do that. And I think especially, and I'm sure everyone will be nodding their head, when you're a project manager in the workplace, what you don't have is you don't have that automatic authority, because you're not their boss, you know, you're not the director in the company, you're not any of these. So actually, us project managers have to find ways to really engage and connect with people so that we can get the outcomes that we want. So absolutely, hence, I've kind of ended up where I've ended up, and, you know, it kind of a natural progression. So I think that number one, and the number one secret about really connecting and being able to influence people is about meeting people where they are and not where you're coming from. And again, this is a very simple idea, but it is actually extremely powerful. So for example, if you're going into an interaction with a senior stakeholder, for instance, you will go into that meeting thinking, you know, I've got to get this, you know, I need to know this, I've got to get them to do this is going on in my life, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. And you go into that interaction with everything that's on your mind, because you're human, and that's what us humans do. Yeah. The thing is that senior stakeholder is coming into that meeting with a completely different map of the world, a completely different view. And actually their day and their week and their lives are completely different to a project manager's. So they're going to have different questions. They might have different outcomes. They may have different challenges and pains and emotions and experiences. So if you want to connect with them, and it goes for anyone you're talking to, if you can really put yourselves in their shoes and empathize and really understand what their pain points are, what their emotional touch points are, what their, you know, what do they want, what are their outcomes, and start at that place at the beginning of the conversation, you're going to get their attention because you're talking about what they're interested in. You're going to be able to connect with them because you're going to talk in their language. And you can, therefore, once you've got that connection, they're like, yeah, that's exactly, you know, that's exactly what I need to do and exactly what I need to know. You then get you build your credibility with them, and you can get the outcomes that you want. So meeting people where they are and not where you're coming from is key to have influence on the people that you're talking to and make a connection and build the rapport in the interaction.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Number
so
two.
I think that's number one. And so number two is on a similar vein, which is matching communication styles. And I'll give you an example happened to me yesterday, actually, in my personal life. We like people, especially when we're communicating, to be like us. It's one of the foundations of building rapport.
Yeah.
So if you go into an interaction, and again, for more senior people, they tend to speak much higher up. So in my life, I'm really, really busy all the time. I just give me the headlines and I will act on them, right? I don't need all the detail. And actually, my daughter, who's 14, she's the extreme opposite, right? And she will give you a half-hour lecture on, something I need to sign up for. And I'm just like, where is it? Where do I need to go? Give me the link and I'll do it. And she's like, well, we've got to go to this website, and I this is what my friends are doing, and this is what and I'm just like, give me the headlines, Rosie, right? And we're just coming into that conversation with different styles of communication. Now, Rosie is obviously only 14, so she's got her own world, but as adults and as project managers, we can recognize the style of communication of the people that we're talking to.
Exactly.
And we can match it.
Yeah.
And if you match that, and again, it's not that you have to change everything that you do, but it's about building the connection and getting the rapport. And you can match it in terms of content. So if they're very high level, you give them the high level stuff.
Sure.
If they want detail, you give them the detail. If they talk really fast and blah, 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 you talk, you match the tone of their voice and the way that you do it. And if they talk really slowly and pause a lot, you match exactly that. And it sounds slightly odd, but we naturally do it. We naturally start matching the people that we have rapport with. So if you do it consciously, you do it intentionally with the people you want to influence, it kind of shortcuts that process.
Yeah, makes sense so far.
Okay, so that's number two. Number three is about being confident in our communication. And this is an obvious one. It's an obvious one, but again, it's something to be really conscious of. So we are naturally drawn to confident people. We're naturally drawn to them because of, it was a survival thing. The strongest people survived. And that sort of plays out in the world that we live in today. So we need to communicate with confidence, and it isn't just about what we say, it's about how we are and what our posture is like. And I think that when you've got sort of confidence, when you feel confident, you communicate confidence, and also it enables you're thinking confidently, right? So your thoughts are more confident and you have better thoughts and they're more productive. And something to really remember is that whatever is going on inside, however you're feeling inside, is what you're going to communicate outside. So it's very hard to cover up if you're not feeling confident. It's very hard to communicate confidently. So you can read it. You read people, don't you? And you see exactly that. You're kind of like, well, they don't seem very confident in what they're recommending, so there's no way I'm gonna buy into that. Exactly. So it's really important to be confident, and we could do a whole podcast on how can you be more confident in how you communicate. But
I think we should absolutely.
Happy to, but there are components like lots of us think that, oh, so-and-so is really confident all the time. I'm not really a naturally confident person, but actually they're just different starting points. So there are components of confidence, and it starts with your breathing and your posture, and you can change the components of confidence so that you feel more confident and therefore you project more confidence. And that is so important, to communicate that confidence when you're trying to influence someone else, because they need to feel like you know what you're doing, and it builds your credibility in, you know, in any interaction that you're having. So confidence is really, really key to all the communication you have if you want to influence other people. And in my story at the beginning, you know, obviously I stood up into that presentation and lacked any confidence at all, and therefore, you know, they were just like, this is wasting our time. So
it's definitely those nonverbal cues, right, that are direct giveaways of how much you may have prepped or not prepped for a presentation or a call. And I think when we use the word confidence, and I will take you up on that offer to do a separate conversation around that, because I think very often project managers are in those uncomfortable situations, which then may lead to less confidence in the way they communicate and influence others. But where I'm going with my comment is that I had a boss who once told me, find your voice. And so far, I feel like it fits into this narrative up until points 1, 2, and 3, in that it's not confidence that equals cockiness and I know everything and you don't. It's confidence in knowing that you have thought about this given topic or situation in a way that would make sense for the people that you're communicating with. And very often, to break me out of my lack of confidence growing up as a project manager, my former mentor / boss would tell me, find your voice. It doesn't mean that you have to communicate and say the same things that I do in the same way that I do, but understand how to deliver the same message, but in your own voice. And that really did give me the confidence to know that Laura could be saying the same thing I am. I just may deliver it a little bit differently, and that's okay. And so I think points 1, 2, and 3 so far are definitely resonating with me. I hope so for the audience as well. Let's go to number 4.
So, excuse me, that's my
no problem.
So everything you said is true, and I think finding there are components of it, and finding your comfort, being comfortable in yourself and your own voice is key, because people are attracted to it, right? Yeah. People are attracted to that confidence, so it's very important. And additionally, number 4 is using certainty in the language that you use. So just sort of going on to one of the elements of the components of what makes up confidence is using certainty in your language. So in a sort of project environment, as a client, and I've been on the supply side and I've been on the client side, and as a client, you really want, or as a boss, you know, you want to hear certainty in what people are saying to you, because it feels like they're in control, right?
Yes.
So if I said to a project manager, right, so, you know, when are you going to have that delivered? And they're sort of thinking, I don't actually know. And saying, well, we think we're going to have it delivered by December, blah, 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 blah. You know, automatically, in terms of communicating confidence and influence, I'm just like, well, are you, or are you not?
Exactly, you know? Exactly. Credibility,
and even,
all of those things take a hit.
Right.
Absolutely.
And even if you don't know the answer, and even if you don't know that you're definitely going to deliver in December, you need to use the language of confidence. We will be delivering in December X, Y, and Z. I know that. I absolutely believe that, right? What that does is it communicates confidence and credibility. And remember, in the previous point where I was talking about, we're attracted to confident people. So I'm not saying that every project gets delivered on time and in budget, because I know that's not true.
Exactly.
But when you're having conversations, you need to be confident about what you're saying. Yes. And in the same way, if the project's going over, you know, you're coming back and communicating confidently, like I'm in control. I know it's over budget, but these are the reasons why.
Exactly.
And this is what I'm doing about it. And if you add confidence and certainty into your language, the person that you're talking to is going to be like, oh, okay, right, they sound like they've got this in control. And that certainty in your language is really important to get across to the people that you're dealing with, and with your project team, right? If you're like, oh, we hope that we're gonna blah blah blah, they're kind of like, well, don't you know? Like,
yeah. They go with it. They go with how you communicate, your confidence in getting something done, and you present information without fallacy. You don't want to give information where you're saying we're on time. What Laura just said, we're on time, but we're actually not. But it's about the way that you control the narrative and are confident in, we've done our due diligence, we're not on time. However, there are certain things we can do to try to get us back on track, and just walk through in a very thorough and logical manner how you've thought about problem solving. And I think with that comes a lot of respect and trust from your peers, knowing that you have tried to think about a given situation from all angles and are presenting the best possible outcome or recommendation for the team. So absolutely makes sense, Laura. I love number 4. I mean, I love 1, 2, 3, 4 so far, but I'm eager to hear 5 to see if it
what
synthesizes.
is number 5?
I have a guess on 5, but maybe I'll just wait to see.
Yes, go on.
Should I guess? I'm curious to see if it's anything about, I could be way off here. I'm curious to see if it's anything about trust, inherent trust, or something like that. Because I think subtly in each of your points, there's this goal to build trust and credibility amongst your peers, which then helps you connect and influence with them. So number 5, secret. What is it?
That would be a really good number 5, but actually I'm going to take a totally different turn on this.
I'm happy about this. Yes.
And say that actually number 5, to communicating and connecting and influencing others, is about, and I think this is one of the most important things that you can do for your career, is being front of mind. And if you think about everyone, you think about your own job and your own responsibilities, and you think about, you know, the higher you go up, the more, you know, pressure, responsibilities, everyone is focused on doing what they need to do. And you can spend, you know, you can spend your time focused on working hard and being the best you can at your job and doing the best you can, but actually that only gets you so far in the environments that we work in. And you actually, I would recommend, and I work with my clients, is to spend some of your time focused on communicating to others, other stakeholders, whether it's line managers, other people in your company, communicating what you've been doing and the success that you've had, and the project teams had, and the projects had. And again, typically project managers, we're always working and trying to get things through, and we're so busy, and we don't add this sort of layer of communication into our sort of week. So adding that layer of, you know, influencing up, reporting up, communicating to others the success. And you don't have to do it in a kind of arrow. I don't mean in an arrow, listen to me and all that I've done.
Yes.
But, you know, it could be things like you could set up meetings with sort of key stakeholders that may help facilitate your projects. Or, you know, it might be people that are going to help you get promoted, or it might be clients and, you know, I've got an idea, can I run it by you? I really would like to get your advice on this. You know, there's a project that I've just delivered. I think you would find some interest in it because of X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
So those interactions are done very indirectly, so that it's not like I want to come and tell you how wonderful I am and how wonderful my project is. Sure. But you can engage with different stakeholders in your working environment, and then you're front of mind for them. And they already know, you know, we've done the, you know, projects that you've worked on, you know, areas that you've worked in, so that when different opportunities come up, they're like, oh, you know, I know that Anne did this project, it's totally relevant to that, let's get her on this project. Yeah. And the thing is if you don't do that piece of communication, you know, and it could be case studies, it could be blog posts, it could be, you know, all sorts of different types of communication. If you don't raise your profile in the workplace, then you're just not going to get the same opportunities. And typically I find lots of people come to me because they are awesome at their job, right? They're doing an amazing job, but they're not communicating to the business and in the workplace the success that they have and their expertise and their competency. So number 5 of communicating and influencing others is to make sure you're front of mind, so that you are on other people's minds and people will come to you for specific expertise and information. And it really helps get on that promotion track that I'm sure everyone wants to be on.
That number 5 blows my mind, because it's one of those things where very often, and this is project manager or just anybody in trying to grow their career, we often forget about ourselves, especially in a project manager role where your job is really to help others succeed. And I love number 5. Number 5 is truly a secret, I think. A lot of folks don't think that way, especially again, in our role, the role that we take up as PMs, we're not often thinking that way about and subtly making sure that people know and recognize the great work that you're producing in your role. And there's a way to do it to where it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like you are taking all the credit of the team. It's in a celebration of the accomplishments of everybody. But when they look back at the historical and see who was the project manager on that, they'll see Laura's name is attached to it every single time. And I'm still processing number 5 because I'm just so in love with it. It just makes sense. And I love that you've summarized 1, 2, 3, 4 with 5, because it goes back to yourself and advocating for your own career, and also making sure that in recognition of your accomplishments, it's also connecting and influencing others because they're kind of seeing the great work that you're putting out into the organization. So that was amazing. And my number 5 cannot beat your number 5 secret, Laura, but
I wasn't competing, but yeah, it is something. And just to add to what you said, it is something that I work with. I call it a personal marketing plan. It is something that I work with all my clients. And typically people who are very competent tend not to do it because we're busy and everything, and we forget this piece. But actually it is core to career progression, and it is, and whatever your aspirations are and whatever they are, it's core to getting on projects you want to work on. And you said it earlier on, it's about trust, and we are all heads down, so busy, we haven't got time to go, oh, they look like they were doing a really good job. It just isn't in our working day anymore. So see it as building trust, building relationships, and just building credibility and expertise in something that you do. And I think for project managers, even more important, because I think a lot of the time, people don't really understand how much work is going on behind the scenes to deliver the project. Yes, so it's a real opportunity to say, hey, this is what, this is the work we've put in, and this is what we do, and this is how we do it, and this is the value. And I'd always be thinking, what is the value that you're bringing to the company and to the clients and to the workplace, and talk in those terms. So really powerful to implement that. And I wish someone had told me that when I was 20, because I would have started implementing way back, and maybe had a different career, but really, really good strategy to implement.
Well, this has been so insightful, hopefully for everybody, not just myself, but I always feel selfish in these conversations because I'm absorbing everything and saying, I want to do all these things, as does our audience. So thank you, Laura, for sharing your 5 so not so secrets anymore with our audience. And I hope that everybody will be able to implement 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to be able to connect and influence and communicate with others. So for folks that want to continue the conversation with you, where can they find you online?
So the best place to find me online in the context of this conversation is to go to www.influenceupwards.com, and there you'll be able to find information on exactly how to do some of the things that we've talked about today, and more information. So influenceupwards.com is really helpful in the conversation that we're having today.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure any other relevant links that you want to share with our audience are posted along with this video and podcast. And if you want to support the Everyday PM podcast, you can do so by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We're on all the podcasting platforms. Feel free to search for the Everyday PM. You can also watch the video version of this on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ann Campea. While you're there, click subscribe, leave us a comment, and click the bell for notifications of when new content goes up. So thanks everyone for joining Laura and I in this installment of the Everyday PM podcast. And until next time, take care.